afternoon, families. My name is Heather Deer. I am the Assistant Director of Parent and Family Programs. I am happy to welcome you to our family webinar series. Our webinar series is designed to provide you with information about the student experience and opportunities your student may take advantage of. Our session today includes a presentation about global education at William & Mary that will last approximately 20 to 25 minutes. At the end of the presentation, there will be time for you to ask questions. We ask that you keep your microphones muted for the duration of the presentation in order to maintain the best sound quality for all attendees. We have learned that the best way for you to communicate your questions is to send them via the Q&A feature in Zoom. You will find this feature at the bottom of your screen labeled Q&A. You can type your questions here. Feel free to submit questions during the presentation. I will serve as moderator for the presentation, and at the end we will ask as many questions as we have time for. At this time, I would like to introduce Sylvia Mitterndorfer, the Director of Global Education at William & Mary. Sylvia oversees the Global Education Office, which administers study abroad and exchange programs, hosts incoming exchange students, manages the Cross-Cultural Communication Summer Program at William & Mary, administers over $400,000 of study abroad scholarships, and supports the university's internalization efforts through global education. She works closely with faculty and departments to advance global education programs and initiatives at the university and to make global education experiences as accessible to students as possible. Sylvia plays a leadership role in partnering with faculty, staff, and administrators to deepen curricular integration of international opportunities, as well as broaden the range and scope of international partnerships through new program development. She is also involved with program assessment, cross-cultural student development, and outreach. Sylvia is a William & Mary alumnus and returned to William & Mary to work at the Reeve Center in 2010. As an international student herself, she has firsthand knowledge about the impact of being immersed in another culture. She previously served as the Director of Overseas Studies Technology at Georgetown University. Before her career in global education, Sylvia worked with policy institutes abroad and in Washington, D.C. Areas of inquiry for Sylvia include immigration and refugee policy, education policy, and biotechnology policy. Sylvia, welcome to our Parent and Family Programs webinar series. We are so happy to have you.
Great. Thank you very much, Heather, and welcome everyone. Delighted to have this opportunity to talk about study abroad with you today and look forward to your questions and continued engagement. For those of you who I maybe met already at various previous sessions, it's really great that you're continuing to be interested in study abroad and supporting your students through this process. So with that, we have a brief presentation, as Heather mentioned, where we'll talk a little bit about how study abroad works here at William & Mary, and then again we'll open it up for questions. So you may have heard me already, or you've probably heard in the course of your time, or your students' time at William & Mary, that study abroad is a pretty big deal here. It's in our curriculum. We're nationally known for study abroad, and we have a lot of different opportunities, which frankly makes it really hard to talk about in a webinar like this, and which is why we hope we'll continue to have engagement with your students and with you throughout the process. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, I always like to take a moment to just think a little bit about why do we think study abroad is so important. It is in our curriculum. It is, again, from funding sources and other opportunities, something that the institution really stands behind. And that really is because we see study abroad as integral to that William & Mary experience and the broader objectives of the William & Mary education. So we think, of course, all of these experiences are academic in nature. Students are getting credit for these opportunities. They contribute towards their graduation. And the idea is that this is very much connected to not only the general curriculum, the core curriculum, but also their academic pursuits and their fields of study. It's part of the exploration of academic work, and it really an opportunity for our students often to see their field of study from a different vantage point, or perhaps to explore a new field from a different perspective, especially for students who might be going abroad earlier in their time here at William & Mary. So academics are very much at the heart of it, whether that be language learning, again, their majors or other call requirements. But there's also a lot of opportunity for learning and growth in study abroad that we deeply value. I know that the director of the Career Center was here recently, and we talk a lot about how study abroad is something that can contribute, even if it's early in a student's career, towards long-term career development as well. Many believe that study abroad's biggest impact is about 3 to 5 years after the experience, as students are out in, whether it be graduate school or in their jobs, to begin to explore and use those skills to shape their career path as well. And we work really closely with the Career Center, and we encourage you to encourage your students to participate in these opportunities. But we do joint programming to help students talk about their study abroad experience in the context of their career and how they might use that in future interviews or resumes or other things. So there's certainly that long-term path. There's also a lot of growth, and as you know, that happens during these years. And study abroad, as we hear from many of the returnees and our alums, they talk a lot about how study abroad allowed them to develop greater flexibility and how it boosted confidence towards getting ready for life beyond William and Mary. As they're exploring the world, it also opens opportunities for self-development and growth and different perspectives. And the other thing that I would just say is, for many of our students, these opportunities are also for growing their network through connections and decades then later of those kinds of continued connections, whether it be with William and Mary students, with faculty who they go abroad, but also then in the more long term, maybe individuals that they met while they were overseas. So those are just some of the examples of why we think study abroad is really important academically, personally, for their own growth and self-reliance and development, but then also for career and future growth. So having said that, let's dive into some of the nitty-gritty and what that looks like at William and Mary. I've mentioned study abroad is a pretty big deal here. We do send more than 59% of our undergraduate students abroad, and these again are academic experiences. This does place William and Mary pretty consistently as the #1 public university in terms of undergraduate participation rate. Nationally, the rate is often about 10% of students, and so this is an opportunity that has become a hallmark, and that really has come, I think, through a lot of different reasons. The university has set a strategic goal, so we hope that we will continue to grow study abroad participation. We also, as you see, by the 50-plus countries, and we'll talk a little bit about program types, offer a broad range of opportunities for students so that they don't just have to fit and go on abroad in one set model or to a very small number of destinations. There are a lot of opportunities, which is super exciting, but also one of the reasons we really want to work with your office, with your students, that your students work with our office to be able to find the program that best meets their needs. And I will mention that all the programs that we talk about today, anything that's run through the Reeves Center for credit automatically gets the call 300, as long as students are bringing back 3 credits worth. And that call 300 is one of the general requirements that is part of, and was very much part of the design by our faculty for the curriculum a few years ago when it was launched. So with that, let me talk a little bit about when, because that is certainly one of the questions that often comes up. So summer programs, which has become a very significant part of the study abroad experience for many of our students, really they begin to open up anytime beginning after freshman year. But we see freshmen, sophomores, and juniors very actively participating in all of these different programs. You'll notice that some of the programs, if you look on our website or your student looks on the website, some of them may be targeted in different kind of levels of proficiency, for example. So maybe that might determine the year as well, but most of the programs are open to students across all the years. In terms of semester study abroad, most of our students who are going abroad for the semester are going during junior year. Some of our students are going second semester of sophomore year, and that sometimes fits best for certain majors. And that's, again, something that the department and our office are here to help support. Our departments have given feedback, academic departments have given feedback around those things. It's very rare that we have, but occasionally some seniors who go abroad for a semester, there's a special petition process because of requirements. And there are just some concerns around making sure that everything lines up in times for graduation. So we really encourage students to look at second semester sophomores and junior year semesters or years study abroad. And then there are other times. So winter break, which for those of you who've had returning students, you've noticed this winter break is already a little bit longer than previous years. Next year is going to be even longer by a few more days, which really opens up this January time window for international and other domestic experiences. And so we often see students participating. We have very thematic programs, and we'll be growing that area of programming as well. So that often works. And again, that's accessible beginning freshman year if they've met the prerequisites of the particular program. And then the last category is what we call embedded or programs, which is really a William & Mary semester course here that has a short-term international experience, maybe over spring break, for example, or in May immediately following the semester. And again, it depends on the different courses and the course requirements, but in principle, that category is open for students beginning their freshman year. So what kinds of study abroad programs are there? You heard me mention that there are a lot of different opportunities, and that makes it really hard to talk about often. One of the programs that many of our students go on is a William & Mary faculty-led short-term program. Again, that's predominantly been in the summer, but we're seeing more programming in the winter timeframe, so winter break timeframe. This, as the name implies, has a William & Mary faculty member going with a group of students overseas to usually on average they're about 4 weeks long, and an opportunity to then dive into William & Mary courses taught by William & Mary faculty and or local faculty, and really crafted experiences for students. They could be thematic, they could be focused on language. I'll give you a few examples in a few minutes. William & Mary also has a few sponsored semester programs. These are programs that are designed during the semester for students from William & Mary specifically. I'll give an example in just a few minutes. And William & Mary also has exchange programs during the semester. The embedded programs, which I just explained earlier, which is a semester course here with an opportunity abroad, is another model for students to go abroad. And then lastly, but certainly not least, is that we work and partner with many other study abroad programs around the world, through other U.S. universities or through organizations or through universities overseas that offer their own study abroad. And students still are William & Mary students. They have all the support of William & Mary, but this really broadens the opportunities that students may be able to pursue. So just as an example, for the semester program, and William & Mary runs usually about 3 or 4 of these a year. One of them that has been very long-standing is in La Plata, Argentina. This is a program just outside of Buenos Aires. We are the only university that works there specifically, and so students have a really immersive experience. We work with a nonprofit there called the Commission on Memory, as well as the local university, UNLP there. Advanced Spanish is required, and the focus really is on human rights. And so students are at this NGO and working there, taking courses specifically designed for them, in addition to having options at the local university. They're living with homestay families, many who have been involved with the mission of the Memory Commission, and also they have opportunities for internship and research. And so these are really, it's one of those kind of thematic and holistic programs for our students where they're getting information in the classroom, but then they're getting to discuss it and see it outside the classroom through excursions and through internships, through research perhaps, and then also in the people that they get to meet and interact with on a daily basis. An example in terms of faculty-led programs, again, as I mentioned, are usually during summer. They're studying with William & Mary faculty. They are William & Mary courses and William & Mary credit. So I really want to emphasize that. And some of them even have the possibility for Call 200, so that students are able to get both Call 300 and Call 200 if they're taking, for example, 2 courses overseas. So as students are kind of planning ahead and thinking about their general curriculum, as well as then their timelines when they might go, this might be also very attractive to students. And really, we offer about 20 of these every year, and I'll give a few examples. This is one where, again, it talks about not only just study abroad for the academic sense, but this is an example of a program that has a community engagement piece of it. We have other programs that have research embedded in it, so that all students are doing their own independent research project with a William & Mary faculty mentor, in addition to the coursework that they're doing on the ground. Other examples of programs include, if we can move to the next slide, yeah. For example, the Rio de Janeiro program that looks at Brazilian studies and anticipated to also have a public health component. We have had a long-standing program in Goa and Bangalore that looks at globalization from different lenses and angles, and students get a chance to interact with local students at the National Youth Law School in Bangalore before moving them to Goa and contrasting the different histories and perspectives from there. We have a program in Kigali, Rwanda through our School of Education that looks at community well-being and peace education. Again, while we have strong connections with the local university, there's also an NGO that we work with that really specializes in this. And so students are able to go with two faculty from the School of Education and explore community well-being, forgiveness, peace education. Other examples, and again, we usually have at least 20 of these in the summer, so please check our website for more details. The Santiago de Compostela program is focused on pilgrimage studies, and students actually are on the Camino de Santiago for part of this program. They're doing academic work, but also having this experience to say, if we're going to study this, we're experiencing it, and then they have their own research angles or inquiry as they go through that process. And the Potsdam, Germany program is an example of a number of our programs that are language-based, that students are, one of the objectives is very clearly to work on their language proficiencies. There's homestays involved in this. There's language courses, but then also thematic courses that are mixed in. So again, on average, these programs are 4 to 5 weeks. There are some that are slightly shorter and some that are a little bit longer. Here's the list for the summer programs that we are anticipating for that we are running in 2020. And the deadline for this, I should note, is February 3rd. So that's coming up really quickly, which is part of the reason why we're really excited to have a chance to talk with you today, so that you and your students are aware that that deadline is approaching very quickly. Students will have decisions by the end of February, usually the third week or so of February, so that decisions and pre-courses and everything can begin then with spring break, after spring break. We also are doing more in the winter space. As I mentioned, examples have been things like in Oman, the Nature and Culture program. We have a new Geneva program that we anticipate will run again that has students at the WHO and other places looking at global health management. So that's been really interesting for many of our pre-med students. So those are just some examples of some of the programs that we have. Again, I encourage you to go to our website because that's really where the most up-to-date lists are. You'll notice if you scroll through the program list, there are hundreds and hundreds of options. And again, there are all these different types. Our office offers a lot of different resources and opportunities that we would like to meet with your student, and we can kind of help parse through those different opportunities. So in terms of logistics, one of the things I really want to emphasize is that all of these programs are for credit, and that our intent is very much for your students to come back with credit. The William & Mary faculty-led programs, as well as the Sevilla and La Plata semester programs, come back as William & Mary courses and William & Mary grades. They're factored into the GPA. They're seen as residential credit. All the other programs are transfer credit, so they still can count towards major, minor requirements. They'll still have the Call 300 designation, but they will come back as transfer credits because another institution is offering those courses. As mentioned, the Call 300, just want to really make sure that that's very clear, that Call 300, all the courses that we're talking about for study abroad programs are eligible, and it is the requirement for the curriculum is 3 credits, and so as long as a student is taking at least 3, they would meet their requirement through that. In terms of requirements, again, it is very program specific. You can imagine that if you're going on an advanced language program and doing research in the local language and taking courses in language, you're going to want to have a level of proficiency that's sufficient for you to be able to succeed there. At the same time, even though perhaps if a student doesn't have those language requirements to be in that program, there are always other opportunities for students to go to start their language abroad or to be at more intermediate or intermediate levels, like beginner and intermediate levels of their language as well. But what cuts across all of these programs is that students do have to be in good standing. They can't be on academic or conduct probations, and so that is just something that goes across the board. And then again, as I mentioned, deadline, the most immediate deadline for summer 2020 is February 3rd, 2020. That's a Monday. And so that's something that's coming up very quickly. On average, the deadline for these programs is the semester before the student goes abroad. There are sometimes a few exceptions for a few of our exchange programs. And then also I would note for our Oxford Oxford semester sponsored program, that deadline is actually December 1st of their sophomore year to go abroad during any time during junior year. So that's really early, and that is a slightly different program with very specific requirements from our host university there. And so again, if your student's interested at all at Oxford, I certainly encourage them to come see us early. In terms of funding, because financial is a really big piece of, as we think about reducing barriers for students to go abroad. As Heather mentioned, we administer a lot of scholarships. In fact, for this year, really excited that we are offering more than $650,000 in study abroad scholarships. That's on top of financial aid, external scholarships, some other departments of scholarships for study abroad as well. So these are very focused. And applications for our scholarships go through the same office, to the same application process as your students will go through to apply for study abroad. As the slide indicates, financial aid is generally portable. We work really closely with the financial aid office so that they can package and create packages around the actual costs of the program, since there can be variations in cost. And we'll talk about that in just a second. And then our office is also very involved in looking and helping your student find external funding sources. So there's some national scholarships, for example, that some of our students have been very successful in achieving, and these students have worked really closely with our office as well. And so we encourage your student, if they're coming to talk to an advisor or others in our office, if they're interested in scholarships, please raise that. Much of the funding is need-based, but we also have some very generous merit-based scholarship as well. And there are long lists of various scholarships on our website. So again, that's a great resource to get a sense of what might be out there. So the other part of financials, what are those actual costs? And how does that kind of compare to what things cost here? And so again, this is where the variety of models yields some slightly different ways of approaching the financials. So I'm going to walk through what that looks like for different types of program models. I will say that trying to find and make our own programs as financially accessible as possible is really key, both through thinking about how we can reduce and keep costs as low as possible, while also trying to support as much financial scholarship support as well. And so really study abroad, the answer is it more expensive or less? It depends a great deal, but there are really study abroad programs at various price points throughout and various opportunities. And so it doesn't always have to cost more. In fact, sometimes our students are able to save some money through this as well. So in terms of the William & Mary faculty-led and sponsored programs, those programs are actual cost programs, and they are just a one fee. It's for in-state, out-of-state, it's the same. It's just a fee that really encompasses tuition, excursions, housing, partial board, and other kind of activities related to that. We also have budget sheets on our website so you can see what we estimate other expenses to be, just to be as transparent as possible for students. And so again, this is for our summer faculty-led, our winter faculty-led, as well as the embedded programs, for example, and the sponsor programs. And particularly in the sponsored programs range, there's a really great range. Of course, Oxford is a very expensive institution, and therefore whatever their costs are, that's what the program cost is. But when you look at, for example, La Plata and Sevilla, which are two of the other sponsored programs, those costs actually are less than in-state tuition and room and board here, and it is just a flat fee. So again, there are some opportunities to think about how study abroad can work financially really well for your students. Exchange programs, we do have some exchange programs. We'll say they're always very limited spots, but they can be very interesting for our students as well. And we really value these relationships with our partner institutions where we send students in both directions. Students on those programs do continue to pay tuition and fees here as on campus, and then whatever local costs, and then the fees are listed on the slide. And then for students who are interested in programs that are not directly billed and run through William & Mary. Again, then the William & Mary bill for that semester or in the summer is much lower than what you're used to seeing, right? The $375 this year and $170 for the insurance that's required. And then students pay whatever it is that that other program cost is. And those programs range. They can be less than William & Mary, more than William & Mary. And whatever the actual cost of the program, that's what we develop a consortium agreement with the institution, sign that so that then financial aid is able to craft the package around that. Health and safety is the other area that I want to make sure to really highlight, especially in today's world. This is obviously really important to us, and first and foremost in our thinking about program development and program management, and as we support students before they go and after. So there are, of course, extensive health and safety protocols and pre-departure orientations for students. We have an international travel security manager. He, I, and many others are on call 24/7 to support students, both abroad and here, of course. We also require international medical and evacuation insurance for all students. As you saw in the previous slide, that comes to about $170 per semester at this time, and it's less than that for summer and winter programs, of course, depending on timing. And so that is in place for everyone, and I'm certainly happy to answer questions, but it does encompass not only medical as a primary, but also bringing students out should there be any issues. And we have a State Department travel alert policy as well, because certainly there are times in certain destinations where we need to review more carefully whether the institution, we feel like the student has appropriate support and kind of for specific destinations around the world. And again, the list of those countries is on our website, as well as the policy and more information about that as well. But again, please keep in mind this is certainly first and foremost in our priority today. So, and then in terms of the last thing that I want to leave you with is really looking at, so here's some information. I've tried to sketch out some of the logistics as well as objectives of what we have for your students. So your students interested, what should they do? Again, our website is a really great starting point. We're also on social media in case they want to be able to connect. Our Global Education Office is located in the Reeves Center. It's near the old campus by Confusion Corner. And from 11 to 5, we have people on kind of standby right there to talk with students who are just interested in coming to talk about study abroad. We also set up meetings, of course. We have peer advisors there. These are students who are trained, who studied abroad and are trained to talk about study abroad. So if your student wants to talk to a peer first, but we also have staff advisors. And again, this is a great way of then maybe parsing through, wow, I know I'm kind of interested in this part of the world, or I'm interested in this area of study. There are a lot of opportunities where may I start with that process, or even more detailed further in the process discussions. We require that all students attend a kind of overview session just to make sure everyone has the appropriate policies, and knows how this works. We have a Study Abroad 101, which is a very general introduction, and 201, which really then gets more into the nitty-gritty. The 101 session is also available online on our website, so if your student wants to watch that at 2 in the morning, they certainly could, or you or anyone else. But then we do ask that they come in and then meet with us as well, so they have the basic information as they're making their way through the process. And then once students are kind of selected and set for study abroad, then we have pre-departure orientations, general orientations, regional orientations, and some online cultural training as well. So with that, I look forward to your questions. I hope that this was helpful to you. I really appreciate your interest and the continued conversation today and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. That was a fantastic presentation, very all-encompassing of a lot of details, but we do have a few questions. So we'll ask as many questions as we have time for in the next 10 minutes or so. Please continue submitting those questions. If it happens that we aren't able to answer your question, I'll make sure to respond via email. So how likely is it that students will get into their preferred summer program?
So I know especially we get this question often from freshmen, having just gone through this very competitive process to get into William & Mary. So our goal is to try to get students to have the opportunities that they want abroad. So this is not, of course, assuming the basic requirements, right? Assuming the good academic and conduct standing, and if there are any prerequisites, making sure those prerequisites are in place. But the goal really is that the majority of our students do get to go. There are some programs that have gotten really competitive and therefore may not be able to accept everyone, But that, is not the majority of these programs, and the number of students who are not able to get their first choice is relatively small. But again, it can be unpredictable. When we see really strong interests growing, then we do develop new programs, but that can usually take another year or two. If a student is not being able to be offered a spot, they will be offered other opportunities where they may be able to go. But our goal is to try to work with your student to make as many of these opportunities possible. So there are some competitive programs, but most of them are able to accommodate student interest.
That's great to hear. Of the students who are studying abroad, what is the breakdown between the exchange program versus embedded program? How many students are doing each of these types of programs?
Okay, and maybe I'll answer it in the all across all programs, because perhaps there are others who have other questions. So in terms of our students, a little bit more than half of our students are going abroad for the summer now, or in short-term programs, than the semester. But that still means we have a lot of semester and year students. In fact, we have some of the highest numbers of year students compared to many of our peer institutions. So that is something that we really value. In the summer, most of the students, in the winter, like the January time, most of our students are going on William & Mary faculty-led programs. So that's really the vast majority. We do have some who go on other programs where we collaborate with. During the academic year and semester, certainly the exchanges are a pretty small pocket, right? Because these are partnerships. And so I would say on average, we probably have about 40 students or so a year going on those programs. We also have the sponsor programs, which have a little bit more than that per semester. And then most of the students going in the semester are then going through programs that are really great through other organizations or direct enrollment at universities abroad. So I hope that helps. Oh, and then the embedded, there are usually, historically, we've been able to offer about 5 courses like that abroad. So we're talking about relatively small numbers. And then the applications for those are the semester before. We'll be announcing the fall and spring for 2020, 2021. That still feels strange to say, but later this semester. So your students, if they're interested in an embedded course for next year, will be able to see what opportunities there will be. The same with winter 2021. We'll be having those opportunities listed later this semester.
We had a question today in our parent and family Facebook group.
Okay.
I thought it was a very interesting question, asking about, are there any countries or places someone with strict dietary restrictions may need to avoid, or how would they learn more if there's a gluten intolerance or a severe allergy or something? How would they learn more about that?
Yeah, I would encourage them to come and talk with us, the student to come talk with us. We work really closely with a variety of different programs, and I don't think there's an answer that's just a straight answer towards like one place. It depends a lot on the individual locations, and again, on the different program types. We've worked really closely for individual students who might have very specific dietary or other accessibility requirements or anything else with our partners on site to see what's possible. How is this possible? Our goal is to try to make as many of these opportunities possible for our students and accommodate those. Yeah.
That's great.
And we work really closely with the student accessibility office too. We're partnerships, so when a student does say, I get accommodations here, how can we translate that and work together to work through that for students to go abroad?
That's wonderful. So I know that some deadlines are coming up on February 3rd. Are scholarship deadlines also February 3rd?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we try to synchronize things as much as possible. So for summer 2020 scholarships, it's the same deadline as it is for the applications. It's in the same system, so your student doesn't have to go to a different place and log in a different way. It's just opening another application, depending on which application it is. We also aggregate a lot of our scholarships. There are a lot of different scholarships behind the scenes, so that your student has to not, apply for 20 different scholarships. They can apply for the Reeve Summer Scholarship, for example, and then a few others that are pulled out with specific requirements to try to really ease that. For summer study abroad, then, the goal is to, at the time of announcing whether your student has been accepted into the program, that right around that same time they would get information around what the scholarship amount is that they've received, and that we're also working them with financial aid so that students could connect with them to figure figure out what this would really look like, all prior before the student having to commit. And the commitment deadline is the Friday before spring break, and so that gives a little bit of window of time so that your student is not having to make a financial commitment before knowing what the full financial picture is. That's really important to us.
Speaking of deadlines, do you have an idea of what the winter deadlines are?
So we'll be announcing soon the deadlines for 2020-21, and so that will be on the website this year. The winter deadline was September 16th, and I suspect it will be probably right around that same time for next year. And I should say, if I can, for just to go back on the scholarships, since I answered it for the summer, we'd also have a number of scholarships for the semester. There are some really generous merit scholarships during the semester as well, whether that be for full year in the UK, for example, or for other kind of specific study areas. That is the same principle, that usually the application is as close to or aligned with the general application deadlines. There are a couple that might be like a month beforehand or something, just because we do have various semester deadlines. So again, I encourage your students to take a look, and we try to get those answers as quickly. On the semester in particular, there also is a growing amount for merit scholarships, for need-based scholarships. And so on the need-based front, especially, what we're really looking at is what is that gap, that difference between if the program is more expensive than being here. So again, we encourage your students to apply to these different opportunities. And in fact, I think there'll be some new things coming up pretty soon on our website. So stay tuned.
Are there certain study abroad options that are better for out-of-state students versus in-state students, or is there a difference?
Yeah, so I'm assuming the question for better means financial. Certainly academically it's all the same, but from the financial angle, it just depends on the various program choices. We do see that for exchange programs, for example, many of our students in-state students find that particularly helpful, versus sometimes their out-of-state students will be able to look at some other programs that are not directly William & Mary, but are still under the umbrella of us, to be able to potentially find some more affordable options. So with St. Andrews, for example, which is a longstanding partnership, there's an exchange track, and then there's also direct enrollment. The student experience is exactly the same, but there is a financial difference that out-of-states are usually finding the direct route, again, still through our office, same things, but more financially attractive. So, yeah.
On the theme of financial questions, I've had a few questions about using a 529 plan. Is it recommended? Is it not? If not, why is it not recommended? Kind of how does that work with studying abroad?
Yeah, and again, when we talk about hundreds of different choices, sometimes that's a hard answer, but we certainly have students who use their 529s for study abroad. There's some more information on our website as well that kind of breaks down which categories. Obviously, your plans can be different across different states as well, so we encourage you to think through that, and we're happy to kind of talk more concretely if we're talking about a specific program.
So are non-William & Mary students allowed to participate in summer programs?
Okay, that's a good question as well. Some of our summer programs are open to non-William & Mary students as well. Of course, our goal is to support William & Mary students first and foremost. So in competitive programs, we see our William & Mary students are going to get priority in that. But then certainly there are some opportunities. All of our summer programs have a required pre-course as well. And so if there's a non-William & Mary student, we work with the faculty to try and find ways of still having that non-William & Mary student be involved. Students do have to be enrolled at a U.S. university, though, as a degree-seeking student to participate.
Wonderful. Well, that is all of our time today. Thank you so much, Sylvia, for spending time with us and answering all of those questions. It really has been phenomenal. If you haven't gotten the email about our full webinar schedule, President Rowe is going to be joining us on January 29th. We are really excited about that, discussing one of her recent reads, Range. You can learn more information in the email that was sent to you. If you didn't receive that email, just send us an email at families@wm.edu, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for interest.